Hi, this is Ken of Rist Innovations. Today, let's talk about how we can use pewter to enhance your woodworking projects. First, I'll cover how I use pewter in my projects. Second, I'll describe what pewter is and the forms that it comes in. Next, we'll cover how easy it is to work with pewter. At the end, I'll show you how to spin this disc of pewter into this wine bottle coaster. So let's go ahead and get started. So here are some examples of how I've used pewter in some of my products. So in the case of like the coasters up front here, the pewter is actually the main product itself. In other cases, such as this jewelry organizer, the pewter is used on some of the key components, like the earring holder up at the top, as well as the rotating base down at the bottom. Over here, I have a jewelry box that I've actually wrapped the outer housing in pewter. And then if you open it up, you'll see that I've actually made individual little trays out of pewter that I have spun from discs of pewter on the lathe. Other options are on a smaller scale to be able to cast pewter into different components, such as this little finial, for instance, that could be used on a jewelry box, or knobs on a jewelry box that might work for your applications as well. In the case of this flower vase, I've wrapped strips of pewter around a mandrel and then attached them together using copper rivets. So there's many different options and scenarios that you can incorporate pewter into your products. So now let's talk about what pewter is. So what is pewter? Pewter is a metal alloy that's made up of approximately 92% tin, 7% antimony, and about 1% copper. And it's a very soft and malleable material. So what are the different sizes and shapes that it comes in? Really, there are three forms. One is the disc form, and those are used for the spinning on the lathe, metal spinning. And then it also comes in sheet form, typically 12 inches by 24 inches. And for the discs and the sheets, I typically buy them in 40 thousandths of an inch thickness. And then the other option is the ingot form to be used for casting. And I mentioned that the pewter is very soft and it's easily bent, and it does not work harden like brass or copper. Also, you can cut the pewter with any standard woodworking tools. It also has a low melting point of around 563 degrees Fahrenheit. So it makes it easy to use in solder pots like we have here. Here's an example of where I've actually cast this little finial using this mold here. In fact, the pewter melts at such a low temperature that you have to be really careful if you're using one of those little micro torches to solder pieces together, because you can actually blow a hole through the pewter very easily. Okay, so now let's go do some metal spinning by turning a disc of pewter into this wine bottle coaster. I'm using a standard wood lathe, but I'm using a special tool rest for metal spinning. They don't seem to be readily available, so you would need to make one or have a local metal shop make one for you. I start with a chuck made from maple. I thread the end of it to match the threads of my lathe. Mine is 1 inch, 8 teeth per inch. And I turn the chuck to the desired shape. Previously, I made a follower for the tailstock. Next, I attach a 5-inch diameter by 40-inch thousandths pewter disc to the lathe by pinching it between the chuck and the tailstock. I manually rotate the piece, adjusting it as I go until I feel the disc is centered on the lathe. Next, I use this trim tool, which has a 1/4-inch square tool steel in the tip with a grinded bevel. You can also use standard wood turning scrapers. Next, I add a lubricant to the face of the pewter. The paste wax will just be fine. Next, I use a blunt-tipped tool that is polished on the end to form the pewter over the chuck. You can also make a wooden tool in a similar shape, which will also work. It's a slow process, and the key is to go back and forth so that you don't thin the pewter too much. Then I trim the pewter to the final size with the cutoff tool. Now I use the blunt tip tool to finish the shape of the coaster by manipulating the pewter down onto the form. To finish it, I use a green Scotch-Brite pad, which gives it a nice satin finish. I tape the piece onto the chuck and remove the tailstock so that I can finish the bottom of the coaster. Next, I turn the piece around to finish the inside and remove any sharp edges. Lastly, I tape the piece to the chuck so that I can finish the inside bottom. And here's the finished piece right off the lathe. I add a felt pad, and I'm done.
So what are you working on, Pewter Guy?
My plans are to do a series of how-to videos on the various projects that I showed you earlier. The first one I'll do is on how to make these flower vases. And when that video is ready, that link will be here. In the meantime, you may want to watch the ultimate push stick video, and that link is here. Thanks for watching.